section is going to be on the original Ballistic Patriot and a little bit of my brush with history, but a little bit of like where we came from. Of course, the original Ballistic Patriot, the original Gangster, the OG BP was, of course, Luigi F. Baldini. And this is a story from the archives about how we got where we are today. So
tell me when you want your clip.
I'll get it. Okay, I'll tell you. So the original Ballistic Patriot was a ballistic. Luigi was a ballistic physicist for the United States Army. Not only was he a ballistic physicist, he was one of the leading ballistic physicists of all time, and for the Army. What happened was in 1959, Sputnik went up, and we got caught with our pants down around the ankles because the Russians beat us to space. And so there was an intellectual movement in the United States military that was kicked off by Sputnik. And the great Dr. Paul Flynn said, well, you know, designing weapons has always been an art. Why don't we quantify the science underneath it? So he hired a bunch of physicists right out of school, brand new, fresh-faced physicists, freshly minute physicists, and set them about the task of finding the underlying science behind and physics behind weapons. And this turned physics, ballistics, into an applied science. And of course, Luigi and his mates were the core of it. They were the ones that were deciding, and they would start from ground zero to figure out, for example, what's the best what's the best shape that penetrates. And they use vacuum tubes, they use X-rays, they use evacuated tanks, and measured everything and tested and found, of course, the long rod penetrator, aka an arrow, is the greatest thing, and everything else that went along with the science, the applied science of terminal ballistics, interior ballistics, and exterior ballistics. Well, then of course they unleashed these geniuses, and this is the best generation. This is their uncles and fathers believe, just like this is the Kennedy generation. You know, ask not what your country could do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And rather than being rich, they sacrificed their lives and their knowledge, instead of being like making money for making toasters or whatever, to win the Cold War against the Soviets. And so he then went on, of course, to design a bunch of weapons and also to do a lot of the most advanced science that was ever done for the Army. His claim to fame was he was in high velocity. He has the record for the scientific record for high velocity through gunpowder, which is 13,000 feet per second. Which, to put it in perspective, a 45 is a slow moving handgun round. That's about 800 feet per second. A pumped up 9mm, it's called a plus P 9mm, is around 1,300 feet per second. A Magnum 357 shoots. The reason why it's a Magnum is because it's 1,500 feet per second. A high velocity rifle is shooting 3,000 feet per second, and of course, an M1 tank gun is shooting at an unheard of 5,000 feet per second. It's why when it shoots the depleted uranium rounds, it sets steel on fire when it goes through Russian tanks. So now you started the show with the railgun. The railgun was shooting a good 5,000 per second. Now, it was originally started for what they call SDI, which is a Strategic Defense Initiative, which is also lampooned by the idiots on the left as Star Wars. But the original goal for that was 28,000 feet per second. And the OGBP, the original Gangster Ballistic Patriot, managed to achieve in 1970s 13,000 feet per second, literally half of what the United States of what the target goal of 28 was, and still twice plus what they've been able to produce. And the Navy just scrapped in your update about the 5,000 feet per second. So anyway, this is a little bit about my brush with history. Now let's go back to 1986 and the Cold War. Reagan comes in. He re-ups the military. Patriotism breaks out. The economy he cuts taxes. The economy takes off, just like good old JFK would have done. And America is winning, and we're winning big. And the Soviets cannot compete. So they look around the Politburo and they put up their greatest idiot, Gorbachev, and he's going to reform the Soviet Union, right? But he's got a problem because they are losing out big time to the Americans, and so they create they go to the he has the Reykjavik summit over in Iceland, and Reagan gets there, and he gets there, and he literally offers Reagan to ban all nuclear weapons, right? And all he requires is that Reagan give up the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, because Reagan, one of the things that he'd done, he said, not only are we going to, get the B-1 bomber, upgrade all our missiles, get the M1 tank, all these other things, and redo the American military. We're going to. Why do that? Why not we try and knock these ICBMs out of the air and out of space, and then we don't have to worry about the Russians wiping us out with nuclear weapons. So he went heavy again, for the SDI. So they get to Reykjavik in 1986 in October, and he offers Reagan the banning of all nuclear weapons. Now, of course, he's a Russian scumbag, and he's never going to fall through it. I don't care how much they lollipop lick and say how great he was, but he's a mass murdering Russian Soviet, right? But the offer was there at Reykjavik, and the offer was this. And you've got to think about it. This is really equivalent to the moment that Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days. And the evil one, the big loser downstairs, offers him, literally all of the power, all the principalities of the world have been put in my control. I will put them, under your power. All you have to do is bow to me, right? It's literally one of those moments. And so Gorbachev is saying, you'll be known as the greatest president of all time. He's been called a warmonger all this time. They've been lampooning him and making all kinds of jokes about him, about being a senile, doting idiot. Reagan versus this idiot, President Asterisk today, right? Well, they were making all these things. He would have been known as the greatest president we ever had because he gave in to this and created peace in our time, blah, blah, blah. And he was sitting there, and now's the time you can play the clip. Brother, are you ready?
I am ready.
Not chess, Mr. Spock. Poker. Do you know the game? Ship to ship.
That's from the Corbinite episode. That's the one where a big the Enterprise shoots knocks out a border marker, and a big gigantic spaceship comes and has them in a tractor beam. It's going to blow them out, and Baylock comes on, their commander, and says, I'll give you 10 minutes to pray to whatever deities you have, but I'm going to off you in 10 minutes. And Spock goes, checkmate, I guess we're done. And of course Kirk pulls one out and says, well, wait a minute, I'm going to bluff this idiot. I'm going to show him, and says, we have Corbinite, and if you blow us up, we're going to self-destruct before you do that and ruin and radiate this entire area, and you won't be able to survive. Kind of like a mutual assured destruction. Now, let us, while Reykjavik was going on in a little known part of the world, in a down in Florida, around the same time, I don't want to give the exact time, but about that time, another little incident was occurring. Now, this was Eglin Air Force Base, which you've ever seen 12 o'clock high, the great Gary Cooper movie. It looks all deserty like. That's where this happened. After his work with the Army, OGBP number 1 retired, and then took him and his mates. Then spent about 20 years putting on education and training seminars for the engineers and the physicists to bring up the next generation. And so one of these, as you know, brother, we got to tag along and flip the view graphs and hang out with the geniuses who have given us everything from all the great weapon systems and the freedom we have to the Sierra book, the great Dr. McCoy and reloading, who started the reloading phrase. And these are the greatest men in the field of ballistics, right? So anyway, I think he was down there with Hal Swift, who was in hypervelocity weapons for gas guns. It's an experimental gun where they shoot a big projectile into a little plug, and that squeezes a lot of gas in there, and then the light guns have high velocity. That's one way to do it, but it's impractical to use. Great for science, but impractical to use for weapon system. Anyway, at that time he was down there with that, and he's giving a seminar to a bunch of these engineers and physicists, and one of them says, "Hey, you want to see a gun?" And of course, Father goes, "Of course I want to see a gun." And they take him on to Eglin Air Force Base. Now, of course, I think he was at one point at GS-16, but there's nobody. He was literally in charge of all the experimental ranges from Aberdeen, Picatinny, and Frankfurt at one point in his career. So, I mean, yeah, he probably didn't have a security clearance then, but everybody knew who he was because he was literally the guy for ballistics for the United States Army. So he comes up to the Air Force Base and he goes, "Oh, we're going to show you this super secret gun that nobody else in the world can see." And it's "Oh, it's Lou Baldini. Oh, okay, come on in." And then he goes, and he says, "Well, who's this guy?" He says, "Oh, it's your son." so I got to go in and see this fold in front of me because it's literally Lou Baldini, right? So anyway, we go and we see what good old RR has cooked up for the Soviets in Eglin Air Force Base. I get to see a Star Wars gun. Okay, so we go to the first building, and it is literally a warehouse filled with AC Delcos, which is GM's one-day production of batteries, car batteries. And these batteries are arrayed in like racks of 12 feet with guys with little white coats. They're literally going up and down the racks, opening them up, and there's 5 batteries deep, popping up all the tops and pouring in water to keep this in. This is how they were going to store the energy for this electromagnetic gun, right? And so they were doing this. There was a whole an entire warehouse filled with these batteries. AC Delco's one-day production. And they were building another one right next to it. This is how they were going to store the energy, right? Then we go to another building, and it looks like the Millennium Falcon of wires, right? And there's these giant, copper cables because they're going to take all this stored energy and use it for the electromagnetic gun. Then we go to another building, and my father's looking at this, the old man's looking at this, and he's going, wow, this is freaking amazing. And I'm going like, wow. And so you go to the next building, and then this is when the old man's spider sense is like he immediately got like tense, like super tense, and he got hot under. I've never seen him like this mad professionally. But anyway, so they start showing us the facilities in this next one, and then they show us the control room, and it's got a 1-inch piece of tank armor. And he goes, "Well, wait a minute. At 13,000 feet per second, you're getting twice that. For my gun, we would do it behind 3 inches of rolled tank armor and concrete bunkers, and we would do it outside and after we fire, it could blow up." And I remember him firing this guy. I remember going to the range and watching him fire this. And you always wait because you with that kind of pressure, that kind of speed, you can blow it up. It's going to take a while to come back down. It's going to go boom. It's going to come up. So it would be like, don't move yet. We just got to wait to see if it comes back down. And so he's telling me you can't have a control area like that close to a gun. And so he's arguing with them over that. Then they take us to the generator for this. And he goes, whoa, wait a minute. That's a Barbarek generator. Me and my Barbarek was one of his partners. And what it is, a Barbarek generator is normal magnets. Generators have a magnet going one way. This generator had magnets going both ways. And he explained to him, now listen, when he came up to it, he's my partner. I wrote papers with him. When he came up with this, we used to tease everybody about it because, and unfortunately people died. It's kind of like gallows humor. But we would tease everybody saying, look, it takes one person to turn it on and one person to drag the dead body away because it creates such a huge amperage field that you ground it out by turning it on. And he's going, look, you can't have this thing that close to the to the control room. And so they're just going, oh, it's going to be okay, blah 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 blah. And he is hot under the thing, the collar. Then they take him to this gun, and we see this amazing square. It's about the size of the 40 millimeter cannon that he had, like a long table. But he's looking at it and he's going, you can't have that much pressure on little rubber patties. They have this, it looked like spider patties. They were rubber patties. And I can remember, and we have pictures for him and his gun, and he had nuts literally this size, that they would crank down after they fired it, because that much pressure, that much velocity out of a 40 millimeter cannon is going to, it's going to roll the nuts off. So he's arguing with them back and forth, going, people are going to die. And this is the thing. He was a very serious, like I said, he was in charge of ranges, and he lost guys. This was no little effort that the United States military on. They lost people. And they're the unsung warriors and heroes, of that time. But they lost people. He lost men directly under him, from the high end science and high end weapons testings that they were doing. And so he's arguing with him, and he's looking at me and his argument. Finally, he goes to look at this gun, and he looks down the barrel, and I see him stop, and I see him a big smile break out on his face, and he turns around to me, and he says, "They never fired it, and they never will. It was all just for show." It was all just for show. Probably, this was 40 years ago. Probably for the first 20 years, it was just for show. It was all just for show. And one of the maybe 6 people in the entire world knew it was all for show. And of course, because he was a patriot, didn't say anything about it and went about his way. And that's the story of the original Ballistic Patriot, and an idea of where we came from. But
it's not chess, John. It's poker.
It's poker sometimes, right? Good old RR. Now they're up in heaven. I'm sure kicking back with a cold one.